There we go. So I will hand you over to Lee in a second. Just a few bits of housekeeping before we start tonight. Any questions you ask throughout the webinar tonight, we will have a question section at the end, but please feel free to ask your questions as we go through the presentation so they're ready at the end. You can do that in the little question box if you're on a phone. I think there's a little question mark at the top, or if you're on a laptop, there should be a sidebar panel with lots of drop-down boxes that you should be able to click on. So that's the way you're able to ask questions. That is all the housekeeping for tonight. So I will hand you over to Lee. Lee, you need to unmute your microphone. Sorry, everybody, we seem to be having a few little issues. Lee, are you there?
Thanks, James.
There we go.
Thanks, James. Good evening, everyone. We got there in the end. Evening, everyone. I've been fortunate enough to know Robyn for a number of years now, and it's been really fascinating to sort of follow her journey through the sport and watch her progress over the years. From my own personal experience, as well as the feedback from athletes and coaches who have worked with her, Robyn's one of those athletes who everybody wants to row with and have in their club. She's a really positive, likable, and hardworking rower. So this evening, we're going to have a look back at Robyn's progression through the sport. We're going to reflect on some of the key milestones and find out what is next in store for her. So Robyn, originally from Currymuir, small town near Dundee in Scotland, educated at Webster's High School. Rowing obviously wasn't everything for you in the early days. Dance was obviously a big part of your life growing up. How did you go and get into that?
Believe it or not, some people who know me now, they will be surprised to hear that I was quite a shy little girl. So when I moved from Dundee to Currymuir when I was around 5, I think my mum signed me up to every sports club that was available, just to help me come out of my shell. And the first one that had a space was Highland dancing. I'd done ballet when I was like really little. And then I took up Highland and I absolutely loved it. It's quite an athletic form of dancing, and I just absolutely loved it. So I did that for years.
And by all accounts, you were pretty successful at it. I think you're going to have to explain this photo for us.
So that is in 2009 when I was 15. I won the World Juvenile Championships. And it's tradition that the world champions drink out of their trophy at the end and pass it around to their friends and family. So that is me with my world championship trophy.
That was obviously squash in the trophy, I think.
Yeah, it was diluting juice.
So what would you say? What would you say you learned through dance that ultimately you were able to take into rowing? What did that experience teach you?
I think from a really young age, it taught me like that I had to be able to balance like education and outside interests. It really harnessed my competitive spirit, which I think I had anyway. And then dancing kind of gave me an outlet to grow my competitive side. I was always really into sport, and Highland dancing was the one for me, but I think it gave me like it set me up really well for them when I came into rowing. Even though you wouldn't really say that dancing and rowing are very similar at all, I think the strength that I had gained physically from those years of dancing set me up really well for joining a novice program at uni.
So obviously you started rowing at university. You were at the University of Edinburgh. I think it's 2011. Complete beginner, never tried the sport before. You know, what was your motivation that allowed you to sort of pick up rowing? You know, obviously there would have been a lot of sports available for you to choose from. What was the motivation that got you into rowing in the first place?
So when I went to Edinburgh, I was convinced that I would still be able to keep up dancing, but I didn't want to move dancing teachers, so I was planning on travelling back and forth. So I thought I could join another sport there to keep me fit and just to make new friends. And I remember I went to the sports fair, and before I'd even arrived at Edinburgh, I had in the back of my mind that maybe rowing might be an option, because I knew that was a sport that people tended to be able to start slightly later in life, and like still be able to progress. And also from my dancing years, I'd always felt like I was quite tall, and I knew that to be a rower you generally had to be tall. So I thought, well, I'm tall, so rowing seems like a really good fit for me. Little did I know that when I joined the rowing team, most of the other people were like 6 foot tall. So I actually wasn't that big anymore, and I had a bit of an identity crisis. But that's what initially drew me to it, is that I thought I was tall.
And would you say you were a sort of quick learner in terms of picking up the sport?
In some ways, I felt like I was quite a quick learner. From that novice year, I think I was generally quite good on the ergo, and that was from quite early on, especially for my size within the squad. Technique, maybe a bit of a mix. I think I was okay as a novice, and then kind of as I progressed, I was trying to match the technique on the water with the power that I was able to show on the erg. Yeah.
So got a nice photo here down the Henley course. You know,
yeah.
What were some of your early memories of rowing as a novice?
So my very earliest memories was that rowing for me at the beginning was kind of my social life. Because I was still very involved in dancing, I kind of saw rowing as my way to make friends and kind of keep a little bit fit, but I more preferred the rowing nights out, which, if you know me now, will again be a shock because I'm not really a night out kind of gal. So that was kind of my most early memories. I remember racing in Inverness in the freezing cold at Inverness Head, but also really enjoying like racing down such a beautiful course. Inverness, for those who have raced there, is like the surroundings are amazing, so I really remember that. I remember racing in my boat races. The Glasgow and Edinburgh boat race was really exciting in my first year. But yeah, that first year as a novice for me, I was still quite involved in dancing, so it was probably my second year and third year into rowing that I really started to take it a bit more seriously, when I realised that lightweight rowing was a thing, because I didn't know at that point.
Well, we'll come on to lightweight in a bit, but you know, obviously you had a pretty successful time as part of the senior squad at Edinburgh, and I seem to recall that you won medals in pretty much most of the boat classes at Bucks events, and I think I remember a couple of wins in, I think it was the lightweight single and quad at Henley Women's as well. You know, what was it like being part of that senior squad at Edinburgh University at that time?
I think one of the most exciting things about my time at Edinburgh was when I joined Edinburgh as a novice, and in my second year, it was still a completely volunteer and student run club. We didn't have a paid head coach. We didn't have that nice a fleet of boats. Everyone was very passionate and everyone loved the club, but there wasn't those systems in place. And then I think it was midway through my second year or early in my third year that Colin joined the team at Edinburgh. And it was kind of from there that my time at Edinburgh really changed. And I'm sure this would be the same for a lot of people at Edinburgh, although the new people at Edinburgh probably don't appreciate now what they have. But yeah, so that was really exciting for me, seeing Edinburgh really grow, and especially in those first few years, you wouldn't have Edinburgh crews in champ finals at Bucks. And then by the time I was leaving, Edinburgh crews were winning champ finals at Bucks. And that was really amazing to be a part of that growth at Edinburgh.
Yeah, so you obviously mentioned sort of coaching there, and you know, I know from speaking to you in the past, I know that the coaches early in your career have had a really positive influence on you. You know, what sort of environment did they create, and how did their support help to get the best out of you?
I think the combination of John and Colin together was like really fantastic at Edinburgh, and it was kind of a perfect combination of people for me. John was the women's coach, so he was like coaching me, but Colin was head coach and writing the program. And Colin had come from a GB background. He knew how to write a really good program, and it was really quick that we were able to see those results. And John is obviously also an amazing coach, but he has that like supportive side to him, which I think I needed. I'm competitive, but I can be a bit sensitive, and I think John really was good at like harnessing those two sides of me and being able to get the most out of me. But yeah, I miss the coaching team at Edinburgh.
Well, John did actually give me a few words about you, so if you don't mind me embarrassing, you know, so this is what John said about you: resilient, tough, determined, adaptable to anything other than bad weather. One of the most influential athletes on my career, and Robyn would always set a good example: lead by our actions. So you know, really, really powerful words there.
Yeah.
John.
Oh, it's good to hear that he thinks I was tough. I think I am tough, but that nearly made me cry. So it depends how you look at it.
As you know, I work with a lot of student athletes, and you know, one of the biggest challenges of being a student athlete is sort of juggling your rowing, your studies, and everything else that comes with being a student. Obviously, we know not all students are particularly good at this. How did you manage to keep on top of everything and achieve success without sort of compromising your education? And I believe there's a bit of a story behind this image.
Yeah, so this picture is from my final year at Edinburgh, my last Bucks with Edinburgh. That's me and Maddie with our 3 golds. Can't even remember what they were in, maybe the lightweight pair, lightweight double, and the open quad. And that is a photo of my dissertation that my flatmate had sent me because she submitted my dissertation for me while I was in Nottingham racing at Bucks, which I think I had also finished quite last minute. So I think I wasn't always amazing at balancing the two, and probably most of the time rowing took priority. But I do think that having rowing, I think sometimes busy people get the most done. So I'm not convinced that I would have been more productive if I hadn't been rowing. I'd probably be wasting time in other ways. And everything always got done. It just meant quite a few late nights in the library, or flatmates submitting dissertations. But I do think that rowing or high level sport does give you resilience and drive to succeed in all aspects of your life, whether that's education, work, performing on the water, or yeah,
a lot of sacrifices along the way.
Yeah.
So I guess if we move on a bit then, so you know, at some point you decided that you wanted a bit more than just sort of club rowing, you know, senior rowing. What was your motivation then for pursuing a performance pathway?
I think into my second and third year of rowing, I started to realise that I was, for my size, relatively quite good on the erg. So that kind of like got the cogs ticking in my head a little bit, and I kind of thought, okay, maybe like there's a bit more to this than just rowing for a social life. And then in my third year, I think, would have been Maddie Arlett, that would have been her second year, and another girl had joined Edinburgh who was going to be trialling as lightweight, and we had never like heard of anything like that before. We didn't really know that that was even possible. and that was kind of when lightweight rowing was on my radar, and I kind of realised that I could potentially harness what I already had and become quite a good lightweight. So that, yeah, I think that would have been 2013 into 2014, and me and Maddie raced in the lightweight pair at Bucks, and we got a bronze, and it was our first champ Bucks medal together. And then from then on we raced at Scott champs, I think, and we qualified ourselves to race at home countries, and that was our first international representation, I guess, and that felt like a stepping stone.
And that was in the Cox Tour of all boats. I guess if you look back on now, and I think the coach's wife was in the crew with you as well.
Yes, yeah. She kept us right, because me and Maddie had no idea what we were doing at that point.
And obviously it was a successful outing to Cork in that particular crew. And there was more medals, I think, to follow in that trip. Tell us a little bit about that 8 that you were part of, and quite a special crew.
Yeah, I think, like, looking back at that photo now, like, wow, what an incredible crew to be a part of. I think I vaguely knew at the time that I was getting the ride of my life and that I was in a crew of big dogs. So even then, I knew that I was up there in the bows, just really, really nervous, because I felt like I had no idea what I was doing, but also just trying to enjoy being in the quickest state I'd probably ever been in. And yeah, looking back at the photo now, knowing what everyone in that crew has now done is just amazing, that I feel very privileged to have raced in that 8.
Yeah, you've actually got a pretty amazing record, don't you, at the Home International Regatta? I know you're quite modest and you probably won't want to say, but so obviously you represented Scotland 3 occasions, 2014, 15 and 2019 last year.
Yeah.
I think you've won a total of 5 medals across that time, and you've got an unbeaten record, I believe.
Yeah, I have won every race, I think, that I have competed in at home countries over a few different boat classes.
What does it feel like to sort of represent your country at the Home International Regatta, and how much, I guess, of a stepping stone have those competitive opportunities been for you in this journey you've been on?
I absolutely love representing Scotland at home internationals, and I love it, or loved it just as much the most recent time as I did that very first time. I think it's not very often that we get to represent Scotland. I'm a very proud Scot, especially from my Highland dancing roots. So yeah, being able to like pull on the blue one piece and race for Scotland is amazing. And I think you get a really nice mixture of athletes, kind of like how you saw in my first year at home countries, getting to race with those girls who are Olympians now. It's pretty incredible, and I think that's the really nice thing about home countries. It might be someone's first experience of an international event, and they get to race in a quad or an 8 with someone who's been to World Championships, been to an Olympics, or in the future will go on to do those things, and I think that's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I certainly remember last year when sort of it was announced that you were going to be in the team. I remember the excitement of some of the younger, less experienced athletes in the team, the excitement that brought to them having you in the team. And I guess looking back at 2014, that's probably how you felt as well when you were starting out. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So apologies about the picture quality in this one, but so early in 2016 you went to compete at the Crash B Sprints over in Boston, not the Boston that people normally associate with rowing trials, the other one, but it was a long way to go for 7 odd minutes of racing, but a very successful trip with a gold medal in the women's open lightweight category. Tell us a bit about how this all came about.
So I had raced at Scottish Indoors in 2015, I think. Yeah, it would have been the 2015, and I'd won Scottish Indoors in the lightweight category. And then at the end of the day, someone from Concept 2 kind of pulled me aside and asked if I would be interested in a free trip to Boston to race at the Crash Bees. I'd never heard of the Crash Bees before, but a free trip to
no way. You said absolutely no way.
a free trip to the other Boston seemed like a very good opportunity to miss, even if it did include a 2K. So yeah, it was a bit random, but it was an amazing trip, and I didn't win a gold medal. I won a hammer. You win a hammer if you win at the Crash Bees. So I have a hammer at my home in Kerrymuir.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were a sort of relative latecomer to the GB trialing process. I think you only did trials in your last year as an under 23. Is that right?
Yes.
But however, you achieved your first GB representation of FISU in 2016 over in Poznan, competing in the lightweight women's single scull. What do you remember from that set of races?
I think I remember feeling a little bit out of my depth. I don't think I had done loads of racing in my single. I'd done trials and a few other like bits to prep for that, but I hadn't done loads. I don't think I'd raced the lightweight single at Bucks or anything. So I did feel a bit out of my depth, but I was really, really excited. It was my first GB best, my proper one. I'd done bits like Holland Becker before, but this felt like something bigger, and it did really feel like the beginning of something exciting. But it was mixed with a bit of sadness because it was also my last kind of time representing Edinburgh. So John had come with me on that trip as my coach, and then at the end of the racing we kind of went our separate ways, and that was when I then went to London. So it was a great experience, but it did have a little bit of sadness.
I do need to ask you about the photo in the left, Robyn, because that sort of image has kind of become your look now.
I know.
I think that much so that you seem to have got everybody doing it. All the photos I could find, everybody seems to be doing it. Well, how did that all come about?
I actually have no idea like how it began, and now I think it's just automatic. Like whenever I see a camera, it's the first thing that comes to my mind, and I know I'll be kicking myself because there'll be no nice photos of me ever. I'll always be doing the peace and pout, but it's become a bit of a trademark now, so I think I need to keep it up.
Yeah, absolutely. So you did mention then, obviously, that was the end of your career studying at Edinburgh University, and in 2016 you relocated to London to do your PGCE. Obviously, quite a big move for you, a change of environment. Although you appeared to settle quite quickly into that new life down there, did you have to adapt to fit in with a new program, or did you find it relatively straightforward?
I think it was really good for me, actually. I obviously loved my time at Edinburgh, but I definitely think towards the end I was quite comfortable, which was really nice. But I think I really needed the change to just challenge myself a bit more. I think anyone will kind of know it gets harder and harder to start somewhere new the older you get. Like you get nervous about if you're going to make friends, if you're going to like it, moving further from home. But I think I settled in quite quickly. The main difference for me going from the Edinburgh programme to the UL programme was UL was and is very like eights focused, so quite sweep focused, whereas Edinburgh had been growing their sculling programme. So I'd spent my time in my single, or if not my single, doubles and quads. So yeah, that was quite a big shift for me. And then the other thing that I really struggled to settle into was rowing on the tideway, steering the tideway. Phil Gray, who was my coach at the time, used to have to tell me that I wasn't allowed to look around anymore, and that he would steer for me because I think I was turning around every stroke, because I was so worried that I was going to suddenly crash into a bridge or a sofa or whatever else comes floating down the river. So those were kind of the two main changes for me.
So 2017 was your breakthrough year as a sort of GB senior athlete. I think you were third at the GB final trials in April.
Yeah.
And then went on to win a silver medal at World Cup 3 in Lucerne in the photo here. I imagine it was quite a special feeling to stand in the podium at a world level event. What sort of memories do you have from that event?
Yeah, that was amazing, and it was my first international race that I had done that year. With my degree, I'd just started my PGC that year, and I was on placement through until Henley, so I wasn't able to do World Cup 1 or World Cup 2. So by the time World Cup 3 came around and I was finally allowed to join in and get into the racing, I was just so happy to be there. It felt, from trials till that point, had felt like quite a long slog. I was enjoying my PGC, but rowing was like the main thing for me, and I just wanted to get involved in that. So that was an amazing trip.
Yeah. And you retained your place in the lightweight quad for the World Champs later on that year, in Sarasota. Yeah. I actually remember watching this race. I remember the university invited me along because they put up a big screen at Edinburgh University in the Catherine Granger gym. They invited people along. I'm not sure if you were aware that you had a lot of fans. Obviously, Maddie was also in the boat with you, and Gavin was in the lightweight men's squad. I think it was the race before yours.
Yeah.
I suspect you'll probably have been disappointed with the final result, but what were your reflections on your first World Championships?
Overall, it was like an absolutely incredible experience, and I think if you'd asked me at the start of that year when I'd moved to London, like if I thought I was going to race at Senior Worlds that year, I would have 100% said no. Like that whole year for me, I was like, I'm just trialing to stay involved in the system, to keep involved, to keep competing at that level, to keep gaining more experience, with more looking towards potentially the following year or even the year after that, because I was studying my PGC part-time, so it was 2 years. And then everything just happened really quickly that year, and finishing third at final trials was, I couldn't really believe it that had happened. So I was disappointed with the result at Worlds that year, but I think something that I'm not very good at generally is like having credit for what I have achieved. I'm quite good at finding the things that I haven't done. And I think sometimes I just need to remember that a lot of the things that I have done now, if you'd asked me a year, 2 years, 5 years ago, if I would have achieved half of the things I have done, I don't think I would have believed you if you told me that I would manage. So yeah.
So before we move on just to your latest chapter, I just wanted to quickly reflect on your partnership with Maddie. You both came through the beginner ranks at Edinburgh, and as well as being good friends, you've achieved a huge amount together in the sport. But obviously, as lightweight athletes, you've also been rivals through the competitive GB trialing process. How's your relationship with Maddie helped both of you to achieve so much in the sport?
I think the combination of me, Maddie and John was like so important for all of our progressions in the sport. Like we used to call ourselves the Three Musketeers, and I think probably even now, like we would all stay in touch and we all realise how important we have been in each other's journeys. I have and always had a really good relationship with Maddie. We were flatmates, even though we were competitors. So we were flatmates, teammates, competitors, and these relationships, like there's always going to be ups and downs, especially like we were spending so much time together. But I think we actually did really well to maintain that friendship, that really strong bond, like all the way through. We would go away to trials together. We'd know we'd be racing against each other, but we'd be sharing a room in a hotel, or we were always there for each other, whether that was like a late night sweat down in the bath or a morning walk to get down to weight, whatever it was. Like we would be there supporting one another, even if we were then an hour or two later going to be going and racing against each other for a seat, which is really nice. So then when we were reunited in 2017 was pretty special, especially because before we went to racing the quad, we were reunited in the double, and we raced at the Hollenbecker. And that was really, that was a really special time for us, I think.
So given there's probably not many people who know you as well as Maddie, I thought it was important to give her a few words as well. So Maddie sort of said, Robyn will always have a very special place in my rowing career. She can be quite shy and reserved outside of training, but her personality shines through when the going gets tough. Her approach to training and racing is relentless. I remember racing with her and thinking, all I need to do is sit the boat and she will get us to that line first. Without Robyn, I'd never have reached the next level in the sport. I knew that if I ever wanted to beat her, I would have to go deeper and hurt way more than ever before. And because of this, I hated competing against her. I miss training and racing with Robyn so much. It's easy to get through the tough times when someone is like her is by your side. She was also telling me a story about Scott Champs. I believe you had a race, I think it was in a pair. And I think she was reflecting about, it was a crab quite early on. And
did she tell you who caught the crab early on?
I think she said she caught the crab. She did own up to that. But she said the two of you couldn't stop laughing, I think, for a couple of hundred meters. And then I think you just sort of clicked into gear and went, you know what, we have to win this race. And I think it was at a photo finish or something like that. It was a very close finish, but you pipped it on the line.
I think we had a few races like that. We also had a bucks race it might have actually been that final year in the lightweight pair, and the weather was terrible, and it was the year that all of the semi-finals got cancelled, apart from they trialled it with the lightweight pair first, so we nearly drowned in the semi. And then in the final, poor John was cycling along with us, and we'd not done any training at all in the lightweight pair, so every race that we did was like, okay, hopefully we'll get a little bit better. And I think we like smacked our blades off the water. Probably like we would get into a groove for 100 meters, and then a wave would come, we couldn't really handle it, we'd lose our spot, we'd fall down the ranks, then we'd get back up, we'd get to maybe second, so something would happen. And then I think it was only the last 300 meters or something we actually managed to get it together and get some consistent rowing. And luckily we did come through the line first, but John did say at the end that we nearly gave him a heart attack the whole way down the course.
I was going to say John wouldn't have been very calm on the side of it.
Not at all.
So I guess moving on to after the World Championships in 2017, I believe you had a bit of a tough start to the season. There was a bit of illness. There was quite a lot of conflicting demands on your time, and obviously you decided to prioritise the completion of your degree. Tell us how you came to stumble upon Visa Coastal Rowing during this period. How did that all come about?
So after the Worlds in 2017, I had planned to trial that year. That was my second year of my PGCE, and I planned to continue with the trialing. But I quite quickly got ill, overtrained. I was just trying to fit too much in, and I felt like I wasn't really doing very well in my PGC, and I wasn't really performing to my best in rowing. So I took the decision to not trial that year. I kept rowing with UL, but I just wasn't doing any of the trialing stuff. And then I found myself in the summer like a bit down, seeing some of the girls that I'd raced with the year before were off at Worlds, and I just felt a bit sorry for myself. And then Gregor Maxwell got in touch about the Commonwealth beach sprints, and just wondering if myself and Kieran wanted to join him and Alex Rankin to do the Scottish team. And I hadn't really heard very much about it. I think there had been some trials up in Scotland, but I hadn't really heard very much about it. But I kind of thought, I've not been doing any other much other big racing this year. Sounds like kind of a fun thing to get involved with. I have no idea what I'm getting myself into, but let's give it a go. And then we found ourselves at the Commonwealth beach sprints, and it was very exciting, as you can see from that photo.
You took to like a duck to water, really, didn't you? Because it was your first sort of event, and first time racing out to sea, and three gold medals and 1 silver. Is that right?
Yeah, 3 golds and 1 silver. Yeah, I think we had the day before the racing, we had a day to kind of practice, sit in a coastal boat for the first time, do a bit of rowing from the beach, and that was about it really. Yeah, it was quite a short introduction, and then we had the 2 days of racing, and yeah, it went quite well. I think we had the mixed coxed quad on the first day, and we got the silver, and all of us in the Scotland team were a bit like, oh no, is this not going to be as successful as we thought, which is kind of strange that we would have thought that a silver might not be that good, given that we'd never done it before. But luckily the next day was a lot more successful, and there were many golds won that day for Team Scotland, which was amazing.
So what was going through your head, obviously, when you were going home from Sandbanks that weekend? You've obviously just gone down. You've gone down to try something with some friends, have a good weekend, have some fun, and you've come away with sort of 3 golds and a silver. What were you sort of thinking about as you were going away?
It just really lifted my spirits. I just felt a lot happier. Like I felt like I'd been back enjoying some rowing, but at that point, like I didn't really have any long-term goals with beach sprints, because I didn't really know that it was a thing that was going to continue. I don't know, at that point to me it felt like a bit of like a one-off, like that was really fun, but like going back to UL and just going to continue with flat water rowing or river rowing, I'm not sure what the technical term is, but yeah, at that point it just felt like it had been a really fun, successful weekend, an introduction to a new part of the sport, but I didn't really know where else it could take me at that point.
Did you kind of imagine that, fast forward 12 months later, that you would be out in China in the team? Was that ever part of the plan? Or?
No, definitely not. I had no idea that was even a potential option to be involved with. So it all progressed quite quickly after that.
So this photo is your mixed quad out in China in Shenzhen. Bronze medal, is that right?
Yes. Yeah. Bronze medal. Yeah.
And probably making some sort of history at the event as well. So I guess as for those of you who don't know, Kieran is also your long-term partner. How's that dynamic on the water?
No, I think it's quite good actually. We work quite well together. Luckily we're both quite competitive, but potentially me more so. Luckily Kieran, whilst being competitive, is quite laid back, so I just boss him around a little bit. When we raced the mixed double at the British Championships before we went to Shenzhen, and we won that, but I sat at bow so that I could do all the shouting and the steering. But yeah, it's a good.
The way the relationship normally is.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it emulates on the water. But I think that was really nice for us to win a medal together, especially because we'd gone all the way out to China. It was quite nice that we could both come home with a medal.
Yeah, well, you know, Kieran was equally kind about you as well.
Oh no.
So Robyn is determined and works hard without making any fuss. People say you need to be selfish to be an elite sports person. She is not. She manages to compete at these events while being friendly to fellow competitors, which isn't always the case. And he also did say that you do manage not to always talk about rowing all the time, and I think that probably helps the relationship. But as you say, both very competitive.
Oh, I don't think he's ever said anything that nice to me. I'll make sure to make fun of him later.
Well, yeah, just don't shout at him too much. So of course, you out in Shenzhen, you didn't just win 1 medal. Of course, you didn't. You won 2 medals. So, as well as the mixed quad, there was also an incredible silver medal in the women's coastal solo.
Yeah.
Why do you think, Robyn, that you were able to adapt so quickly to this new format?
I think my fine boat, what should we call it, fine boat rowing? My fine boat rowing background really set me up quite well for jumping in to the coastal rowing situation. I think especially was helped by the places that I have learned to row on. So Strathclyde Park is pretty famous in the rowing community for being incredibly wavy, and anyone who's trained there long term will know that the fun boat, and anyone who doesn't know, the fun boat is not fun at all for rowers. It's a big massive speedboat that only comes out when the water is perfectly flat, and it races up and down beside the lanes and creates massive wash. So that definitely helped then going into the coastal rowing, and then also rowing on the Tideway, again very well known for being quite wavy, and especially on the weekend when it's really busy with lots of launches, lots of other rowers, yeah, really big boats. And I think whilst the sea is obviously a bit wavier, you are in a wider boat. The single is wider than a fine boat single. So I think that was probably, as much as I complain about the choppy water, and as John will say that I do not like bad weather rowing, those things actually set me up quite well then for racing in the sea. I felt more confident than maybe I would have if I'd only gone rowing on beautiful glassy water. Yeah.
So in terms of your competition here, obviously we've seen your Chinese opposition who you met in the final there on the podium with you. They'd obviously been running a program, haven't they, for quite some time, sort of targeting this event, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they seemed pretty well drilled in all of the finer bits, maybe.
Yeah. So just before we're going to open up the floor, hopefully to some questions in a minute, and I'm hoping that before that we're going to be able to show your race from the semi-final. So hopefully James is able to come in here and pull the video up. And Robyn, if you're able just to talk us through the race, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll give it a try.
Just give me a second. Robyn, it may mute your microphone when we start the video. I'm not sure I can scrub through actually, but we'll I'm afraid it's not going to let me scrub through to the time marker. So the video, yeah, sorry, we won't be able to show the video this evening because it won't let me scrub through. The video's 3 hours long. But if you go to YouTube and search for World Rowing Beach Sprint Finals, the time marker is 2 hours, 41 minutes and 52 seconds. But unfortunately, I can't get you there this evening. Sorry about that.
No problem. Okay. Look, thank you, James. I think Robyn, you'll just need to relive some of the excitement, I guess, and maybe just describe for us, I guess, the race. Obviously, you start on the beach, and there's a sprint down to your boat.
Yeah. So you start on the beach, you run to your boat. In that particular race, there was a false start, not from me, from the other sculler. So that's quite nerve-wracking. But yes, we had a restart back on the beach. So you run to your boat. You have to get yourself into the single. There's at least 2 boat handlers holding your boat for you, which can be quite a rough job, especially if the waves are quite big, if they come crashing in quite big. So in some of the races, people were losing seats if the wave was coming in at the wrong angle. But yes, you jump in your boat, and then you've got a slalom around 2 buoys, and then you go out to a much bigger buoy, and you have to do a 180 turn around that buoy, and then race straight back into the beach, which is much harder than it sounds, given that the waves are generally pushing you one way or another. And it's like, I think in normal racing you are looking behind you, but you're not always looking directly behind you, so trying to keep your line is quite difficult. There are people on the beach kind of steering you, but they can be quite difficult to see. There's a lot going on. But yes, you race back to the beach, and then you have to jump out of your boat, run back up to where you started, and there's a buzzer that you press at the end. So it's much shorter than any racing I've been used to, 2K racing. It's really fast paced, and there's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of things that can go wrong. In my first race out in China, my seat was pushed down by the wave, so I kind of missed that getting in. And then if you lose a couple of seconds there at the start, it's quite hard to get back into it. And you also can get time penalties if you go around the wrong side of the boys. So yeah, there's a lot of things to be thinking about, but that's one of the things that makes it so exciting. You never really know, you can't really guarantee what's going to happen.
I guess some of the people watching this evening maybe aren't aware, but beach sprints is a potential new Olympic discipline. There'll be a decision. IOC are going to be considering it in December, and could actually be introduced as soon as Paris 2024. I know there's also discussions about a potential new home international event as well. What's sort of next for you then, Robyn? What are you where do you go from here?
So at the moment I'm still doing a bit of training. I've just started a new job as a teacher, so I'm kind of at the moment finding my feet with that, with having an actual grown-up job and how training fits into that. But I still think it's really exciting with the potential of the beach sprints growing, and I'd absolutely love to be involved in the next stage of that if and when it happens. I think it's a really exciting opportunity for the sport going forward, just branching out into something new, bringing in new people, and I think it's very exciting for spectators to watch if you are able to go on and watch the footage, not just of my race but of any of the racing. I definitely recommend it. The footage is pretty incredible, and it really gives you a feel for the excitement.
Yeah, it's certainly a really different production feel, isn't it, to
Yeah.
all of the other rowing that we'd watch. Okay, well look, for me, Robyn, just want to say congratulations on everything you've achieved so far. I think just over the last sort of 40, 50 minutes or so, we've really covered a lot, and it's a testament to how much you have achieved in a relatively short space of time in the sport. But equally, all the very best for the future. It's very hopefully with a potential Olympic sport coming in, and there's opportunities ahead. So all the best for that as it comes.
Thank you, Lee.
I'm going to sort of hand back to James just to see if there's any questions in for Robyn this evening.
Yeah, so we have a couple of questions. So first one is, what advice would you give to anybody who would like to experience rowing on the sea? How important is it to spend time rowing on the sea?
I think if you want to give it a try, the best thing you can do is just get in the boat and give it a try. You won't really know until you get in there. I think it is important to have that time on the sea, but I think you can supplement if you're not near a beach, if you're not near somewhere you can do coastal rowing, you can definitely supplement that with the fine boat rowing training. I haven't spent that much time rowing on the sea. Before we went out to Shenzhen, I think we did a couple of weekends with in the coastal boats, but other than that I was doing my regular fine boat training, and that seemed to have stood me in a decent stead going forward. So I think don't stress too much, but get out on the sea whenever you have the opportunity to.
Brilliant, thank you. And the other question was, after you left Edinburgh University, did you work on anything else while continuing to row? And what else did you do to keep your life balanced while rowing?
Yeah, so when I moved from Edinburgh to London, I was studying for my primary teaching degree. So at Edinburgh, I studied English language and linguistics, and then when I arrived in London it was to go to university, so I wasn't just rowing full time, I was rowing and studying, and then beyond that I was working as a nanny and continuing to row. So for me, I felt like I needed to have other outlets out with just training. I think that allowed me to get the best out of my training, not having everything completely focused on rowing. And I also like to try and do other activities. So I'm really into yoga, just doing other sports or other training things that don't feel as performance based, I guess, was helpful for me.
Brilliant. Thank you, Robyn. And that's all the questions we've had come in.
Cool.
So thank you, Robyn, for agreeing to take part tonight, and thank you, Lee, for agreeing to host as well. I think you've both been amazing.
Thank you for having me. Sorry about my video.
James, I do actually have one more question. Actually, and I should have said this is a question that John Hickson had asked me to ask Robyn, and it was Robyn, if you could go back to 2014 and give yourself one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think my biggest piece of advice that I probably still need now is believe in yourself a bit more. I think most of the things, I think that's one of the things that's held me back the most, is that I doubt myself quite a lot. I second guess myself, and nothing's ever quite good enough for me. So I think that would be my piece of advice, would just be enjoy what you're doing and believe in yourself, because that's going to get the best out of you. Yeah, that'd be my main advice.
Good advice to end on, I think.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for taking part tonight, and thank you everybody for attending. Apologies for all the technical issues tonight. Hopefully we'll get some of these things ironed out for future webinars. And with that in mind, we have a continued series all the way up to the end of November coming up. Next week we have Together We Can, looking at invisible barriers, so looking at how clubs can support members from low economic backgrounds and other invisible barriers that may stop people from joining the club. That's on the 19th of October at 7 p.m. The week after, on the 30th of October at 10:30 in the morning, we have a coaches corner, which is looking at welcoming challenge, so looking at more than boat speed and how coaches can build conversations with athletes and parents, and going on those areas as well. So please do look on the British Rowing website for future webinars. In about an hour's time, you will receive a feedback email asking for feedback this evening. We would be very grateful if you could complete that feedback. Also, as well, I will include a link with the time clip for the YouTube video we were going to show, so you will be able to see it there once you've received that email as well. So please do click on that and have a look. That leaves me just to say thank you to Robyn and Lee again for taking part tonight. It's been a pleasure having you on. I hope everybody enjoys their evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.